Hi, I'm Ben with Heirloom Roses. I'm going to walk through the steps of planting your rose in the ground and helping it get off to a great start. So your rose is going to arrive looking like this. There's going to be some new growth on it, but most of the growth and foliage will be defoliated. It means that we're going to pull that off. We do that intentionally, and what that does is it helps that rose not wilt. It helps it retain its water and just makes it more rigorous as it goes into the box and sits in a truck for 5 days. So once you pull your rose out of the box, you're gonna take your pruners and cut this fastener here at the bottom and go ahead and take the plastic all the way off the pot. The next thing you're gonna wanna do is give this rose a really good drink of water, meaning that you're gonna water it from the top all the way through till water's coming out the bottom. That will help your rose get kind of situated and ready to be planted into the ground, off to a good start. Okay, so the first thing with planting your rose, after it's taken out of the packaging, been watered and all ready to go, is making sure you have the right location. We're looking for a location that has well-drained soil, and it's really important for your rose to get 6 hours of continuous daylight during the day. Your rose needs that to grow and thrive and put off great blooms. If you have it in too shady of a location, your rose won't grow as strong. It will get long and lanky, and it's gonna really struggle. It really needs that daylight to put off healthy growth and bloom. So we're in a location here in the garden with a great sunlight. It's the south is this way. It's gonna get really good exposure, and we've got really well-drained soil. You'll see in a minute here as I start digging that this is really good soil. I'm really blessed to have really good soil in our yard, and we've amended these beds for years. Now I know that some of you are dealing with clay and other bad soil, and we'll have another detailed video on how to deal with that. But in short, you want to make sure you really amend that type of soil well with lots of organic material. We'll do some of that here today and then go into that in more detail in a later video. But in short, big hole, lots of organic material that will help break down that clay and make sure that the roots of this rose can really grow and thrive and drain well. So another important aspect is 6 hours of daylight, but also you want to make sure that you've got room for that rose to grow. So we say at least 3 to 4 feet from other plants and with good space around. Now there's a lot of space here, but in your yard or garden there might be other companion plants around and things, but you just want to make sure that that little plant that you're planting in the ground, that rose, is going to get bigger. And so just anticipate that and make sure you have room for growth. So I'm going to start here. I've got a good layer of bark dust and mulch on the ground. I'm just going to peel that back because it's going to go back in place after I get the rose planted. So we're just going to, and I know as I do this, some of you are looking at that going, wow, I wish I had soil like that. And I understand that not everyone does. So we'll talk a little bit about how to get your soil to this type of condition over time. Okay, I'm starting to get down to the soil here. I have about kind of 3 inches of mulch on top, which is what I really like to keep on top of my beds. I have an area here that's about 3 feet in diameter. That's about how big I want to work with because I'm going to have the hole be about 2 feet wide and about 2 feet deep. That's a good rule of thumb is 2 shovel widths wide and about 1.5 shovel widths deep. That's a good start. Now, if you're in clay soil, I hate to say this, you might want to make a bigger hole and amend more soil. It will make a big difference for your rose and the way that those roots have room to grow, and the amending will break down the clay. So we'll go ahead and start digging this hole out and getting ready to plant. As you can see, my hole's about 2 shovel widths wide and about 1.5 deep. So approximately 2 feet by 2 feet. In clay soil, you might want to make that a little bit bigger, even though it means more digging in hard soil, but you'll be happy you did. And this will give the rose here plenty of room to grow and for those new roots to spread out and do well. So we'll go ahead and start the process of amending the soil. So we're going to add back in good organic material and good topsoil to really give a good mix for that rose to start off and grow in. So we're going to use 1 part peat moss, 1 part either living soil, or if you have good soil, we'll put that back in. Then we're going to use a cup of bone meal, and then we're also going to use some worm castings. So the worm castings are a organic material that really help feed the mycorrhiza in the soil and get that soil health really growing and thriving. That will also help you break down clay soil. So we'll go ahead and start the process. I'm going to go ahead and put the peat moss in first, and we're going to mix everything right in the hole before we plant the rose. Okay, so I've got just the right amount of peat moss here. We're just going to go ahead and pour this right into the bottom of the hole. And we'll start mixing in the other things. It's a good time though for me to remind you that if you're going to put in other soil, particularly bagged potting soil, you want to make sure that that soil doesn't have granular fertilizer in it. Read right on the package, and if it says it has granular fertilizer in it, you don't want to use it. That granular fertilizer gives off too much nitrogen. It can burn the roots and it will void the warranty of the plant. So really watch that carefully. No granular fertilizer. We'll talk about fertilizer at the end here, and we'll use liquid fertilizer only for the first year of your plant. So I'm going to add in worm castings. We're just going to pour these right in here on top. I'm going to use about half a bag per hole. That's plenty, and it doesn't look like much, but these worm castings are really strong and good. The soil loves them. They won't burn the roots, and it's going to just really make a great environment for your plant to grow in. So worm castings, and then we're going to add in about a cup of bone meal. Now, I say about a cup. We're not going to actually measure it. We're just going to be general and put in about a cup of bone meal. So I'm going to go ahead and mix these parts together so that bone meal is really well mixed in and the worm castings are mixed in. And then we're going to go ahead and start mixing in the soil in on top of that. And we're just going to really break that up and get a nice, good mix going on here. I'm also going to get some of this bark dust that we used before. You can use mint compost as well. I'm going to mix that in too. All of that organic matter is really good for the roots. As you can see, we're just going to keep mixing it right up here. Breaking it up with the soil there. And go ahead and dig clear down to the bottom there. Pull it from back up and really mix that well. Okay, as you can see, we have a good soil mix here. We've got our peat moss, compost, soil, bone meal, worm castings, all mixed in really well there, and it's a good mix. It's still a little clumpy, that's okay. It's gonna break down over time, and it's just a great place for that rose to start out. Now, we've amended the soil. Hopefully you're watching this video in advance of getting your roses. And I wanna say if you've got quite a few roses on order, you may wanna start and go ahead and amend the soil in the areas you're gonna plant your plant, and then wait for your roses to arrive. This can sit here, it breaks the project up into multiple bite-sized chunks. When that rose arrives, you can just plant it right into your amended soil. It's a good way to go. So we're gonna go ahead and put our rose into the ground. So literally, I'm just gonna make a space here with my hands. You can use a garden trowel if you want, but I like getting my hands into the soil. If you can't dig in the soil with your hands like this, then it's not amended enough. Make sure it's good and fluffy and really can just be scooped out with your hands. And we'll take our rose, pop it off the container. We'll save that. We'll put that back in. And with our roses, they're young roots. They're going to be rooted all the way to the outside of the pot. You don't need to break up the root ball. You can just go directly into the ground. So we're going to go ahead and place that into the ground. And the bamboo, it can either stay in the rose, or if you want to protect it from, kids and whatever might be flying around your yard, pets, but we can also just set it off to the side. It's just part of the packaging material. So then we're going to go ahead and get the soil put back in around the rose and just push it in. Now, as you can see here, I've got a little divot in the soil around here. Some of that's going to help hold in water, and then I'm also going to come back in and put in the bark dust and compost around there to fill up. And with own root roses, go ahead and plant them deep. There's no graft union on this that you have to worry about. So if you plant these deep, it's just going to promote more rooting and more growth and make sure your rose is exceptionally healthy. So, all ready to go with that. The cardboard in your packaging, of course, it's all biodegradable, and it makes for a really good ground cover around the rose underneath your mulch. The worms in the soil and other microorganisms are going to come up and eat that cardboard to pieces. It's going to provide a great weed barrier, and it's also going to help keep moisture in the soil. So reuse your box. So we're going to go ahead and just disassemble our box here, pull it apart. And I'm only going to use this portion right here. So we'll just cut like that. We'll use that somewhere else. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this box straight down the center. And we're going to go ahead and cut 2 triangles out. Lay those down. Cut another triangle out right here. And we're just going to go ahead and piece these right in like this. Now, I always like to leave a little space right around the rose because we're going to want to water it in with some fertilizer, and that gives a way for that liquid fertilizer to get down there. But that will create a great weed barrier and a great way to help your rose get off to a great start. Okay, cardboard is in place. We're just going to go ahead and cover this all back over with our mulch and ground cover. The mint compost is going in right now. That's a great way to really help that rose do well against bugs and keep the moisture in the soil. So we'll just cover this right in. And as you can see, I have a pretty thick layer of mulch here. I really think it's important to mulch in your rose as well. 3 to 4 inches, kind of a minimum. Keeps that moisture in the soil and really helps the overall health of your plant. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and water in our rose with liquid fish fertilizer. We have some new growth already showing on our rose, so it's a good time to go ahead and water. And we'll just go ahead and use as directed right into the watering can and water your rose in. And as another reminder, you might be tempted to fertilize this rose the first year with granular fertilizer, but we don't. It's liquid fertilizer only for that first year. That's super stinky, but it works really well. And so it's really great for outdoor plants, and it actually is really good for indoor plants as long as your wife is not home and she doesn't know you're doing it. Okay, so for continued care of your new rose, we're going to want to do 1 to 2 inches of water 2 to 3 times a week. And of course that varies by climate. If you're in a really hot area, your rose is going to need more water than that. And in Oregon, in a rainy spring, we won't water quite so much. It's getting enough from the rain. And then fish fertilizer about once a month. That'll just help really keep that rose healthy and growing strong. For more information on roses and to shop for own root roses for your garden, visit us at heirloomroses.com.